But regardless, let's go right ahead and talk about some of the free agency moves that I think a lot of teams are going to have to make. And they're going to be some very difficult decisions. So we'll start with the first one, which I think is a little bit more known to everybody. And that is Klay Thompson with Golden State. So he's occupying the reserve role now. He used to be a starter, but after playing really bad, I'm sorry, I wish there was a nicer way to sugarcoat it, but there's really not. After playing really bad and shooting really bad, he's been downgraded to a reserve player. Now, it's really, a lot of people might find that as, disrespectful. Like, oh, he's Klay Thompson. He's got 4 rings. Throw up a 4, right? But it's really not when you think about it in hindsight. Klay Thompson, since after getting injured on his left leg, so many times and being sidelined for the longest time, he did end up helping the Golden State Warriors and winning a title. But ever since that injury, he's sort of not been the same player on an efficiency standpoint. Now, he obviously, he takes the same amount of shots, and his role is the same on the team. But in terms of efficiency, he has not been the same player. And not only that, his defense has also taken a bit of a toll. That was one thing that made Klay Thompson such a formidable guard in in 2016, 2017, 2018. It's not just the fact that he's shooting 40% from 3, but it's also the fact that he could guard one of your best guards. He's one of the better defenders for Golden State, and perimeter defenders at least. And that aspect of his game was sort of taken away because of his foot injuries and his ankle injuries and things of that nature, like his tearing his Achilles, tearing his ACL, those kind of things. And with the way he's been playing, again, it's very, it's up and down. There's no real way to be efficient when all of your shots are three-pointers. So, you have some good days and you have some bad days. The first day he got demoted to the bench, he had a phenomenal game. And it was oh, maybe we should put him back in the starting lineup. But, so far, no. I think where he's at right now is relatively good. But if he shoots the ball a lot better, then yes, he should go into the starting lineup. But it's all about shooting now for Klay Thompson. It's not about the defense now, because his defense it's taken a toll. It's all about that shooting. So there's a lot of uncertainty as to how much money Klay Thompson is going to ask for this coming free agency. And if he asks for a lot of money, seeing as how Draymond Green was offered an extension, I'm not entirely sure if Golden State should continue to keep Klay Thompson on the Warriors. Now, the Warriors, they reportedly offered Thompson a 2-year extension in the range of $48 million prior to this season, and that would have been significant, a significant pay cut from the $43.2 million that he's asking for in the final year of his current deal. And that number didn't take into account for Thompson eventually losing his starting job to rookie Brandon Podziemski, and it also factored the expected torn ACL and ruptured Achilles in the past. So because he remains an elite catch and shoot threat, he's shooting 38% from deep overall and 40% since the All-Star break, which is really good. And that proposed $48 million deal, it might still be fair, but then again, it is a lot of money coming from a sixth man. And they're going to have to make that decision of whether we stick with Thompson or we leave him, or we let him rock, we let him roll. And I think that if he demands more money, that's when they should let him roll. But if he doesn't, if he does what Harden did and accepts the pay cut because of roster management, and because if he really has that winning mentality, then he would definitely take the pay cut and allow Golden State to sort of sign whatever players they need to help them compete for the title. I'm just fixing my hair. I don't know why I do that. But regardless, this would be very good for Golden State if Klay Thompson can still have that winning mentality, and if he could allow the Golden State Warriors to sort of underpay him. Not really underpay him, because $48 million, I would say $48 million is overpay now, but in hindsight with Klay Thompson, it's like it's still a pretty decent amount of money. And if he sort of allows them to build the roster around them, we might see Curry win another ring, because the Golden State Warriors, they're very good at drafting and they're very good at bringing free agent players on their team, as you guys will definitely remember from 2016 and from the previous years after that. I mean, they drafted Jordan Poole, they were able to get Andrew Wiggins, they were able to get all of these key players the minute they lose Kevin Durant, and it's like, okay, they're back to winning again. But I digress. Those are the difficult decisions that they're going to have to deal with. If he asks for more money, move on from him. If he doesn't, then it's fine, because the league is full of these catch and shooters. Like, as painful as it is for me to say, because I really do like Klay Thompson and I really like what he did for Golden State, and I do think he is one of the underrated players, like, of all time. But in hindsight now, with the way that this league plays offense, there's a lot of players that can do what he does. And there's arguably going to be more players that can do it at a much more efficient rate now than he can do it right now. So I personally think that if he asks for more money, move on from him. Next is the Los Angeles Clippers and what they're going to do with James Harden. So James Harden is sort of like this new face coming in, and there's been problems with James Harden around a lot of teams. Like, he had a problem with Brooklyn Nets, he had a problem with the Sixers, and who knows if he's going to have a problem with the Clippers now. But I will defend James Harden and say a lot of these problems coming in are not caused by him. They are caused by the organization or players within the organization. So the scenario in Brooklyn, he was a problem, and he had a problem, I should say, because of Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving wasn't playing a lot of games. So in his mind, he was like, okay, what are we doing if he's not playing a bunch of games? Are we trying to win a championship here, or are we just going to cater to Kyrie and his little game? It was obviously, like, as a fan, it was the most annoying thing in the world to deal with COVID and to deal with Kyrie's shenanigans. And now James Harden has to deal with Kyrie's shenanigans. Harden wasn't having it, so he decides to request a trade, go to Philly. He goes to Philly, he takes the pay cut, he tries to win, but obviously, like, when you're on Philly, it doesn't work. What can go wrong will go wrong with that team. I'm sorry, that's how it works. And he goes to Philly, takes his pay cut, and then we were given information or news about him saying that Daryl Morey is a liar. That was what he said, and that was the quote. And this propelled Daryl Morey to end up trading him, obviously. Like, I mean, you wouldn't want a player that's unhappy on your team like that. So they ended up trading him. And it was later revealed that Daryl Morey has said certain things to certain players and ended up going behind their back. He told Chris Paul that he wasn't going to trade him. He also told Patrick Beverley that he wasn't going to trade him. And here they are on completely different teams. But I digress on Daryl Morey. This isn't about Daryl Morey. This is about Harden. And most of what I just brought up, it's not his fault. It's faults within the organization. And the reason why he requested the trade was because, again, Morey lied to him. Because I'm assuming the reason why he says that he lied to him was because he was supposed to get a max extension coming in from Morey and the Sixers. And even though he didn't play like he deserved one, Morey still said that he was going to give him one. Like, that was something that was promised to him at the beginning of the season and taking that pay cut. And he didn't fulfill that promise. So, again, you could also look at it from the other way. Well, he didn't play like the player that they signed him for, so maybe that's why he doesn't pay him. But that's a whole different debacle. And so, whole different debacle, same thing. And with that in mind, he goes to the Clippers, where he has a very, very good shot of winning the title. Now, if he doesn't end up winning the title, what's next for him? Like, that's sort of the problem. And it's like, what about Paul George's unresolved contract? Like, could James Harden take some of that money? And, like, could the Clippers, like, if his he has knee problems. Paul George, he does have those knee problems. Now, if he does not play in the playoffs, or if he doesn't play well in the playoffs, could that cause the Clippers to pay more for Harden, since Kawhi Leonard is already inked up he already has this new deal, and he's sort of inked up with this new deal, sort of face-saving effort in case Kawhi Leonard expresses dissatisfaction, those kind of things. But is there a possibility that Harden could end up making more money as a Clipper than Paul George makes money as a Clipper? And that could end up upsetting Paul George and thus breaking the entire three apart. Now, again, maybe there's not a problem between contracts, and Paul George is totally fine with Harden making more money than him. I personally doubt that, but I have no idea. I have no idea where either of their mindset is. But if you were going to pay one, I would pay Paul George, because obviously Paul George has been on the team longer, and he's not I understand Harden runs the offense on the Clippers, but Paul George, there's a loyalty thing behind that. That's my opinion. That's what I'd do, but I digress. Next player that is facing a lot of free agency problems, or that could face a problem in free agency, is if you keep DeMar DeRozan and you're the Chicago Bulls. Now, this team with DeMar and with Zach LaVine, it hasn't really worked as well as I thought it would. Their production individually is good, but in terms of team success, it's not good, and it doesn't make any sense because they have really good players. They have Kobe White, they have Nikola Vucevic, they had Zach LaVine, and DeMar, he's one of the better scorers that this league has seen now. And it's the fact that they don't really have much to show for it is what baffles me. They aren't even a competing team in the Eastern Conference. And they're always seen as mid. With these players, it is very, very disgusting that you are mid. So I think you should get rid of DeRozan completely. He's already playing, and you should get rid of Zach LaVine. Honestly, completely rebuild the team. Because, the Bulls, they've been playing, the better in recent months, and DeRozan's, his offensive contributions late in games, they definitely help. But it's obvious, the obvious move from play-in team with a flight risk vet is a move, they should move him for the trade deadline. They should have moved him once the trade deadline hit. I'm very surprised that they didn't end up moving Zach LaVine, or they didn't end up moving DeMar DeRozan. So instead, they decided to hold on to DeMar, and everyone else who might have been flabbergasted by that move, or might have been willing to trade, ended up losing interest in him. And a sign-in trade would also be a possibility, but DeMar would have to agree to such an agreement, or to such an arrangement, and that doesn't really change that the Bulls probably should have gotten something concrete for DeMar when they could have. But if the plan was to keep DeMar all along, why not work out an extension ahead of free agency? It doesn't really seem like they're trying to work anything out, and that could technically still happen by the end of June. But the years and dollars, DeRozan could be extended for a starting salary of up to 140% of his current $28.6 million contract that he has, and it might be difficult to settle because he's putting up 23 points on 58% true shooting percentage while leading the league in total minutes played. So he should also be among the front runners for Clutch Player of the Year, so he can clearly still contribute to this team. But if you zoom out in the broader question, are the Bulls the right answer? What is an offensive-only wing worth as he enters into age 35? That is the question that the Bulls have to answer, and the question that DeMar has to answer is, are the Bulls really the right move and really worth staying when I'm going into my 35th season? Those are the two type of questions, and I feel like the Bulls, they have to answer. I don't think DeMar DeRozan should be on the Bulls, but then again, we will see. Holding on to him just seems like a little bit much after what's been going on. Again, like I said, blow up the whole team. Completely start anew. Blow up the whole team, because that's sort of the only answer that I feel works really well. So I do have time for one more, and one more player is Pascal Siakam from the Indiana Pacers. Now, Siakam was sort of traded there just out of nowhere, and it was like, boom, you're on the Pacers now. And when you're coming from the Raptors, that's not really a bad thing when you think about it. Okay, I moved from a really mediocre team that isn't probably going to do much in the play-in to a really good team offensively, but is probably still not going to do much in the play-in because of their defense. And I don't think maybe it's not right to call Siakam's free agency situation an impossible one, but it is certainly fraught. Now, they clearly dealt with for Siakam with much more than a half-season rental in mind. So other teams like the Sacramento Kings called off their pursuit on the All-Star, and the Athletic Siakam wasn't likely to re-sign with Sacramento, which is why they ended up cutting that deal. And the Pacers, they're now pot committed, I guess you could say. They have to pay whatever it takes to retain Pascal Siakam, because failing to do so would mean the team basically set the 3 first-round picks all the way to Toronto for no reason. And because, again, those 3 picks were involved in the trade, so if he ends up deciding not to sign back with them, it's like, okay, we just gave those picks away for literally no reason. The Orlando Magic, the Sixers, and the Pistons could have enough cap space this offseason to offer Siakam that max deal with a projected starting salary of $42.3 million. So if the Pacers can't match either of those teams, it might be a really, really big problem. And they have the advantage of upping the number of $181.9 million for 4 years to $189.5 for 4 years, plus the potential trump card of adding an additional 5th year that would juice over that would make the contract worth about $245.3 million. Now, that is a lot of money that you're paying to Pascal Siakam. And I don't want to disrespect him whatsoever, but Pascal Siakam, that is a lot of money for him. And that's a very, very big decision that the Pacers are going to have to deal with. Are we going to end up paying Siakam all this cash, or are we going to let him rock? Are we going to let him roll? That's the ultimate question, but I digress. With that out of the way, we are out of time for this second segment, so I'm going to go ahead and go into the third segment where I give a quick recap of all of the NBA games that went down yesterday. So go ahead and stay tuned for that.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk?